God created Adam. Okay, what's the picture representation of that? Like, she's seeing a bunch of pictures. How does she know? Oh, that must be the right picture. I'd like
to be set up for when they release the home version.
Yeah, right. You can play along. Hail, Internet! It's Paul, it's Matt, the Dork Lords. We are here talking about Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 4, A History of Violence. Just to give you our opening and closing, we open on Montrose reading the Sons of Adam bylaws that he got from George before George was killed. And then he burns it. While he's reading that, he's also listening to an account of the Cold War and how there's the Soviets versus the U.S. And I think he's trying disarmament. I think he's trying to get rid of the things that could destroy his family. I think it's the idea, which also plays into the end, which we'll talk about here in a second. But also, interestingly, during this time while he's debating whether or not to destroy this book, we hear flashbacks, an audio flashback to him with young Atticus. And it sounds like he's physically abusing him. I mean, we kind of guessed he might have been abusive, but he's beating him. And so I feel like we get confirmation that it was not a great upbringing for Atticus at the hands of Montrose.
Right.
We end this episode with Montrose somewhat shockingly slitting the throat of this Arawak guardian, Yahima, basically so that they can't translate these pages of the Sons of Adam. Again, I think it's this idea of, let's get rid of the things that can hurt my family violently, a history of violence. Perhaps it plays into that. But before we launch into other stuff, your thoughts on the episode, good sir?
I did not like this episode as much as the others.
Okay.
One reason is because I wasn't especially impressed by the whole Raiders of the Lost Ark aspects of it.
Certainly was a Raiders of the Lost Ark homage, which is not Lovecraft, by the way. He wrote it. No.
He would have been on the side of the Nazis.
That's a good point. That's right. He would have been Belloc.
Yeah, so I wasn't crazy about that part. And the seduction of Ruby, it left me wanting. I mean, I guess obviously they weren't trying to establish a real sort of romantic connection between the two, but
this is with William.
Yes. Although, your theory is making me rethink that.
Yeah. So we'll launch into that real fast. Actually, there is a theme in some ways about gender and sexuality play a lot into this particular episode. We see Yahima, character at the end, is called, I think, a two-spirit. And is basically has, kind of both male and female sex organs. It's, kind of a non-binary character. We have the fact that I think it's fairly well established now. I guessed that this might be the case, and I think we got more confirmation that, in fact, Montrose is gay. Tree has that bit where he's talking with Atticus about how, looks like he and Sammy have gotten really close. And then the part that I think you were just bringing up, which I think also plays into this idea of gender fluidity, is the fact that there's a scene where we see Christina drive up to, I guess, her house, whatever, some estate she's got in Chicago. And she walks up to the front door, and it's very deliberate. The camera just sits there for a long time. She walks out of frame, a couple of seconds pass, and then William walks back into frame, and then he goes and he beats up the cops. And it occurred to me, we don't really see them together. I think William and Christina are the same person. She's got either a spell, somehow she can basically morph herself into a male or female guise, depending on what she thinks is most effective for her in that moment. Yeah, I think William and Christina, same person. There you go, which does play into this theme in this particular episode. So there you go. And so it's a Christina / William that is seducing Ruby.
Right.
We see in in the trailer for the next episode, and we brought this up last recap, but there's a storyline in the book in which Ruby, in order to get the job as a counter girl, she basically can pass herself as being white. I think the idea is that Christina is trying to basically get in good with Ruby because she feels like that's a connection to Letty and to Atticus, and she can maybe use that connection to manipulate, Letty, for instance, or maybe manipulate Ruby into doing things, getting information, being her spy, perhaps. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the reasoning for that relationship?
I'm still kind of not skeptical, but I have a wait and see kind of attitude, really. I mean, because the extent to which all this using of the, Aerie or whatever, and all the magic and witchcraft and all that, I'm hoping that I'm not going to start rolling my eyes at that point as the stuff that the stuff comes in more into play. I mean, I understand that there's magic and everything. I'm just not. I'm hoping I'll be ready for it.
I got you.
But at the moment, as it's getting a little more arcane, I'll
say this.
Completely along for the ride.
For the longest time, if you ever had like the dream house, like what would be in your dream house?
Yeah.
My answer would have included a room with a giant mechanical orrery in it. Like you'd sit down on this big couch, and then this like the solar system would like spin past you in mechanical terms. Probably quietly. I'd like it to, oil it up so it's not like. But yeah. So
now we didn't really discuss that the last time, right? When Hippolyta found that.
We mentioned it in that it seemed like there was this device she found, and we didn't see what she was going to do with it, but she probably took it, which she did. I'm like, did she put it in her purse? How did she get out with that thing? Like, I'll just take this with me. But we see again.
Well, it's like Letty was downstairs with a bunch of people holding hands.
Right. So that's right. She's like, whoa, all right. Well,
it's like, hello, racist. Excuse me, while I just walk out the door.
So it was just like a, like a parting gift, just like a door prize. I won the orrery. I'll just say that. So we do see that she's investigating the orrery. It is not for our solar system. It has 2 suns. It's for a different solar system. And we get the illusion that if she can just find the key, she can make the gears work, and it can work. We also see that that's the reason Christina wanted to get into, manipulated Letty into getting this place. She wants the orrery. And she indicated something about a time machine, which that threw me.
That's okay.
Because I assumed it was like for another world, like a galaxy or something where you could transport to another place, where maybe Horatio Winthrop had hidden the pages in another world that's accessed through the orrery. Time machine makes it a little different. That brings me around to my prediction from last week, which was at some point Atticus becomes the hero with the bat that saves little kid Montrose and George.
Right.
Anyway, but
that's true.
We'll just see. Anyway, they threw out time machine. I'm like,
they did. They threw out time machine. Yeah.
Okay.
With that orrery, I don't know if it's gonna be like Superman 1, where like, no.
That's right. You brought up the good point that I didn't know. I didn't think about until you told me in one of our recaps long ago from another show. But we brought it up, and like I thought. Okay, wait. I thought he
thought that he was turning the Earth back.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, no, he didn't turn the Earth. But okay, he did not turn the Earth back.
No,
everyone.
He didn't turn the Earth back, everyone.
Paul knows.
I'm glad he was able to remind everyone.
There is this certainly a Indiana Jones vibe to the little quest to get these pages. These are Titus's pages, which they eventually do get. It's underneath this museum in Boston. The museum has this exhibit that is dedicated to Titus's, imperialism, colonization exploration guy, motif. And so we see things like, you make the light will shine on the particular keyhole that's important, which is also, by the way, from The Hobbit. But okay, anyway, it's doing a Tolkien reference. But you've got the bridge, a la Last Crusade. It's got the big swinging blade, much like Last Crusade. There's an Indiana Jones vibe to it. Thing about it to me is it felt rushed. Like one thing in particular, I was like, I think you could have played it out better. Is they get to the end of the bridge is dissolving behind them, right? And there's a door, and they're like, oh my god, we got to push the right pictograms at the right time. And then Montrose remembers the poem from the beginning of the episode. It's like, yes. This is how you do that. Okay, I understood that. What I didn't see were the actual pictures they're pushing.
Yeah.
Like they didn't give us a chance to kind of see and interpret. Like part of the fun of doing one of those kind of like puzzle trap adventure thing is, it's putting you in that place. And like, how would I react? And so by not showing us, they just showed pushing. I thought they missed a beat there. That would have been kind of fun to be like, in other words, he says like, God created Adam. Okay, what's the picture representation of that? Like, she's seeing a bunch of pictures. How does she know? Oh, that must be the right picture. I'd like to be
set up for when they release the home version.
Yeah, right. You can play along. Anyway, there was a little sense of being rushed in that moment because they had to get on. They had to move along. Another thing, you talk about the magic of it. The magic being that even though they're in Boston, there's this portal that leads up into Letty's house in Chicago.
Yes. And they notice the dead racist who killed at the end
three dead racists floats by, which is Letty's clue that this is an interdimensional elevator.
Yes, I recognize those crackers.
Which, by the way, assuming that now works, could she just go to Boston anytime she wants now?
Oh yeah,
like she could just be like, hey, I'll see you guys. You want something from Boston? I'll pick you up something.
Yeah, she could start some sort of travel agency,
Exactly. She could be like taxi service.
Like, come on down to the underground train station.
I mean, honestly, for that service, because you're getting put probably downtown Boston, you could charge a lot for that. You could be like charged more than a plane ticket. You could be like, look, a couple $100, and you can use my elevator. You know, like woohoo, gold mine.
Right. I was feeling bad though for the guard though. They just pretty quickly like, oh well, let's just break everything and walk out.
I told him we wouldn't break it. Yeah. This confused me. It's a small point, but basically, okay. So the show wanted to have all these extra folks join in on this thing. So they came up with an excuse to have Hippolyta and Dee like, let's go to the museum. Oh, okay. And then Tree is like, hey, I got to see a Philly and Philly. That's on the way. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Then why is he at the museum in Boston?
Oh, I don't know.
Philly's on the way. So wouldn't he no longer be in the car to be in the... Anyway, okay. That's fine. It is what it is.
Oh, okay. No, maybe I thought you were going to say that you were confused where I was confused. Oh, okay. At the end of the episode when Hippolyta is like looking at the map and trying to drive around. I didn't know what was going on there.
Okay, so what I got out of that is she realizes that from the drawing and the thing that's circled on the map that the last place George went. What? George went? No. Okay. Different guy.
Norm!
Norm! The last place George went was Devon County. So she's turning the car around. She's going to head to Artem with Dee. I think that's the whole reason.
Isn't it after sundown already?
Yes. I think she's got a ways to... Actually, she doesn't have very far to go. She's in Boston. She didn't have far to go at all. Because they apparently get a phone call. I don't know how they got notified, but Dee's like, how did they get to Chicago already? Hippolyta was like, I don't know.
Yeah, who do they call?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they had a phone in their home.
Ghostbusters. Yeah, right. Did they have a car phone? Was that a...
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so I mean, I think that's the whole reason that the show made this somewhat of a contrivance for Hippolyta and Dee to come along, was so that they could already be out in Lovecraft country and then decide to go to Arnhem. So I think that was, it felt a little forced there, frankly, but so be it. The plot has moved along.
I mean, it wasn't even important enough for us to see the conversation, which,
Which conversation?
The conversation that says, "Oh, well, we're back in Chicago." What?
Oh, yeah, right. I'd like to, how? What was that all about? How do you explain that? Yeah, because Dee's like, what, are they going to ride with someone else? And anyway.
She's too irritated by the situation, but I was irritated too. It's like...
something we do learn that's very important, story-wise, is that there are 35 lodges. There were 35. One's been destroyed, so now there's 34 lodges. But there's and one of them, the Chicago Lodge, is apparently being run by that evil cop.
Yes.
Because Christina goes to visit him, and he also makes the point: women ain't allowed in the Sons of Adam, which is why then she probably has to be William in order to whatever move around. Move
for some reason, she does not decide to be William.
Yeah, I know. Assuming that's true. Now, maybe it's not true, but if it is, it's interesting that she's asserting.
Or it's possible that they all know that.
Good point. That's her. Yeah. That could be. That she is actually Christina, and she can morph and put on an illusion of a male figure, William, but everybody's like, it's Christina. So now we've got Titus's pages have been found but not decoded.
Yes.
And Horatio Winthrop's pages are probably to be accessed through the orrery in some way. So who ends up with all those pages and how they get decoded is one thing. So this Yahima character was, I believe the Arawak are a group of people from the Caribbean. So probably I think I even mentioned something about this, but Titus's journeys, he went probably to the Caribbean and did terrible things to the indigenous people there. And in this case, Yahima was translating parts of the book, realized eventually that Titus was a terrible person and refused, and so got cursed. And also part of the curse was if Yahima could ever escape from this prison, Yahima would become a siren, would not be able to speak. They were trying to figure out how to fix that problem. Yeah. And going to teach her, let's say her, teach them, because we'll say, use the proper pronouns here. Teach them English so that they could translate the book more efficiently. That's what is basically the death sentence for Yahima, because Montrose hears Atticus say that. It's like, all right, we'll stop this violently.
So I mean, if they don't, if that really is the last time we see her, but I guess it's possible we might see a spirit of her or something. It's frustrating for me. Here's a character of some importance. It might feel like, ooh, that's edgy. Oh, we didn't see him killing her or them at the end. But...
Right. Why introduce that character only to kill the character off literally in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
10 minutes max.
Yeah.
It was just like a plot point to say Montrose is serious.
Yeah. I mean, you could have, I don't feel like you gained anything, especially by having her, that siren thing, I guess you learned about. You wouldn't have learned about if she or they had died at that, area, or they couldn't leave or something, or if you were
going to kill somebody
you could have had Montrose, when all that was happening, do something shady that kept her from being, and everybody could have seen it and been like, why didn't you do X instead of Y that allowed them to escape? So, I don't know.
I agree that it seemed like
but it was suspicious, and it didn't play all that well for me, actually.
I agree.
When Montrose I was like, "Oh, you're so brave," or whatever BS he says
they did the
to him.
reversal, right? They're like, "Oh, they're setting up a nice father-son moment," and then immediately he does the, kill a guy, kill someone in cold blood, basically.
Yeah, stuff that wasn't working for me in that episode. They can still redeem it, but there were things that weren't working for me in that episode.
I guess the history of violence could in terms of the title, could refer, certainly we mentioned, to Montrose, but also to slavery, also to these explorations of Titus's, where he went around and exploited people, and then that history has, it's on display in a museum.
Sure.
Here's our history of violence. The haunted house got unhaunted last time. We didn't really have a lot of time to deal with that in this episode, but Letty is still there.
Yes.
And they used the elevator to get back to Chicago.
Yes, they did.
So, it's being used to good effect.
Yes. The guillotine elevator.
All right, I do my one Lovecraft quote per recap. So I picked one today. This is from a story called "The Picture in the House."
Okay.
This one, I think, actually is very good for the series as a whole, in terms of like the Lovecraft component to Lovecraft Country. I think is summed up in this particular quote. So here we go. Searchers after horror haunt strange, far places. They climb to the moonlit towers of ruined Rhine castles and falter down black cobweb steps beneath the scattered stones of forgotten cities in Asia. The haunted wood and the desolate mountain are their shrines, and they linger around the sinister monoliths on uninhabited islands. But the true epicure in the terrible, to whom a new thrill of unutterable ghastliness is the chief end and justification of existence, esteems most of all the ancient, lonely farmhouses of backwoods New England. For there, the dark elements of strength, solitude, grotesqueness, and ignorance combine to form the perfection of the hideous. Boom.
Okay.
Anyway, so basically saying like, hey, if you're looking at people that look for horror, look in all these exotic locales, but the place you really want to just look, a New England farmhouse.
Okay.
That's where all the terrible things happen. So yes, hence Lovecraft Country. Atticus kisses Letty. Their relationship is obviously contentious, but also they care a lot about each other. Montrose is secretly trying to undermine the entire enterprise. I think he's thinking for the good of the family. Or what do you think are his motives? I feel like those are the only ones that we see at this moment. I mean, the whole issue of Montrose's sexuality is obviously going to come more to the fore. They've just been hitting at it so much. Sure.
So his fear, I guess, he's an older person and older than the two younger ones. So he's he even chastised her for her pioneering.
Yep.
So perhaps he's going to reveal more about the fear of what they've been doing. They've been perhaps too brash or whatever. I mean, he's I guess still a mystery why he went along in the first place, but to go all the way down there to get stuck. But
now he knows a lot about our Sons of Adam. Now, is it just because he read the bylaws before he burned them? Or he was kidnapped originally, and I don't know. Like maybe he might.
I wonder if it was William that enticed Montrose to get in the car.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be an interesting plot point. Hippolyta has the orrery, and we think is going to use it to transport herself to another place. There is a short story. One of the stories in the anthology, I believe, involves that. So some version of that, I think, is going to happen with the orrery. Okay. And I think Christina, We see the racism angle, but we also see, in her case, a sexism angle where the Sons of Adam are like, no women allowed. So maybe she's out to break that particular...
to be transformed more or something?
Or like to run these lodges, or maybe like, in other words, you never included me. Screw you! I'll find a way to be included. I'll get all these pages. I don't know, just to be an interesting thing of here's someone who's very racist and is like subjugating a whole bunch of people, but is also feeling subjugated herself. Might be an interesting little wrinkle there, but yeah, those are the thoughts I had. Anything? Oh, one other thing. We talked about this a little bit earlier. In this particular episode, they've used modern music in other episodes.
Oh, right.
But here in particular, it was pretty jarring. I feel like they created a time period for the show, which is this mid-50s, and they go to great lengths. They got the cars and the houses and the dress, and they're filming on location, and they're doing all this stuff. You know, I feel like you got to lean into that and not... It breaks your it's anachronistic to include modern music. I don't know your thoughts on that, sir.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I feel like I would have been like one thing they've done now that I'm tired of already. The first episode ended up with Cinnamon and.
Yeah, they've done Cinnamon a few times.
Just that same every single time. It seems like they ended the show with that, and it's like there are other songs. It's like
I agree.
It's like that's one of the ways in which they can be. They can be original. It's like that. I really like shows that are like really try to end on a note that's but this is always
like
the same damn note.
This particular song sums up in some way what you just saw.
Or like is contrary.
Right.
So there's like it gives you an interesting aspect. It's like it's trying to create a different mood just to go in the opposite direction. If they were going to take modern influences and infuse it, like if they tried to mix it with older songs or do
the Westworld thing
or whatever.
Like the Westworld would take modern tunes and then put them on a player piano.
Right.
So they put it into the context of the world they created. Right.
I mean, they could even tried done earlier, not time specific. One thing that I always think about is how the Sting, for instance. Ragtime wasn't popular at the time of the Sting was portrayed. It was actually earlier, but because it was old timey.
Right.
People like it created a tone and a sense of also probably highlighting the aspect of this the whole con stuff is dying down or whatever. But so they had a chance to do something. They could like go for spiritual or anything. But this, and one of the things too it kind of highlights, which I think they should be more conscious of is the times when, like, you certainly want your characters to have agency, and in this time it's difficult to have agency with all the fear they should have been feeling about, white people retaliating against them. But, to the extent where it's like, okay, you have them reacting in a way that's, perhaps bolder than they might need to be, and then have some modern music, it just makes it feel like, come on.
I see. I got you. This is the time and place that we've set our characters.
Yeah.
And we're gonna play that out. Commit to it. Don't cheat. All right. Like,
Yeah, I just feel like it's like, oh, we want to get this mood. Oh, here's this pop song that we could use to get this mood, and it's like, oh. Okay.
Yeah. Are you telling me there's no other way to get that mood? Like, there's no song from the 50s that might have encapsulated that, or
and that makes the other times when they have orchestration, like an actual orchestra in there. This is another like weird tonal thing for me. It's just like, what are you doing? Anyway,
they could be more focused in the musical choices for the show. But we will be back talking about episode 5, and we'll also be talking about The Boys.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Paul. Any final thoughts?
No.
All right, so be it. Appreciate everybody. We'll be back talking about episode 5.